everybody, Gerald here with your weather forecast. Hope you're having a wonderful start to your weekend, and thank you for joining me in today's video. So I actually want to start off by saying thank you. The last couple videos have done very well on the channel, so I appreciate all of the support that you guys have given over the past couple of days. Also, I apologize if it takes me a while to get back to you in the comments. I'm a very busy person, and a lot of the times when these videos get uploaded, they get uploaded at 4 o'clock-ish, and usually that's whenever I go into work, and I work till like 10 or 11 at night, and then a lot of times I have class the next morning at 8 or 9 o'clock. So that's just kind of the reality of things. I'm quite a busy person, so I do apologize if it takes me a while to get back to you. But I will try my best to do that in a timely manner. So, discussing today's video, though, we're going to talk about what's currently ongoing right now across the country, as well as some rain this weekend into the second half of the weekend, especially so for your Sunday. But then we're going to spend just about all this video talking about that boundary next week that will likely lead to some icing for a lot of people. I don't expect major impacts out of this, but definitely anytime you get any sort of icing, you definitely want to be weather aware, and we're going to talk a ton about that. We're also going to talk about the potential for a dangerous cold shot. I think is looking more and more likely going into the Northeast into next weekend, and then we'll briefly touch on kind of what to expect after this pattern, and what we can expect going into the start of February. But with all that said, if you do enjoy this video, go ahead and hit that like button, and I'd love for you to subscribe. We're getting very close to 1,000 now. We gained just 40 or so yesterday, which is super cool to see. So we are working our way there to that big goal of 1,000. Okay, with all that said, let's go ahead and get right into it, because I don't want to waste too much of your time. So looking at radar right now, you can see we do have some of this snow ongoing here into the northern plains and Midwest. We talked about that in yesterday's video, and we are seeing that unfold now with some of that snow there into Chicago, Milwaukee, and even Detroit seeing some of that snow. Other than that, you can notice we do have some rain beginning here into the southeast, and that is what will likely continue into tomorrow and Monday, bringing some of those rainier conditions for a pretty big chunk of the southeast. What this is doing, though, is setting up the stage for that colder weather, and we will talk about that. But briefly touching on our hazards, you can see we have those winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings ongoing here across sections of the Midwest and northern plains for that system that is currently moving through. Okay, so looking at our current temperature map, you can see what I mean by that colder air. Look at this very cold Canadian air beginning to filter in behind that Clipper-type system that is moving through the Midwest right now, and that will continue going into tomorrow and Monday especially, and that's whenever we're going to set up that boundary of cold weather here and likely create some of those conditions for that icing going into next week. So looking at tonight's temperatures, excuse me, you can see that boundary already really taking shape tonight. You can see a very clear gradient here between that cold Canadian Arctic air and then this warmer southeast ridge, helping to moderate some of those temperatures for us here in the east, and more specifically the southeast. So tomorrow, again, a lot of the same story there. You can see that very clear boundary. We'll have temperatures in the teens in parts of Kansas, and then just one or two states over, temperatures in the 60s and 70s. So this is going to be quite the boundary to see unfold. And this is one of my favorite parts of weather, is kind of these interesting things like this, and just knowing that some places that are not that far apart are going to see crazy temperature differences with this gradient tomorrow. So, talking about this weekend right now that we're in, we'll go ahead and discuss this really quickly and then go into that main topic afterwards. So, right now you can see we already have some of that rain ongoing here into the southeast, and that will continue into tonight and into your Sunday morning, as you can see here. Very showery kind of weather and heavier rain further down towards the Gulf of Mexico. And then what's left of that snow is still kind of locked up into the northern sections of New England, but we don't expect anything too major with that. But as we go into your Sunday afternoon and into Sunday evening, I think that's when the weather really deteriorates here into the southeast, and that heavier rain really begins to move in, especially going into Monday morning. I think quite the washout. In a place like Charlotte, Columbia, South Carolina, seeing some of that heavy rain as well going into your Monday morning. But as we get through the afternoon Monday and into Monday evening, I do expect some clearing for at least a little bit before we then start to talk about this icing potential working its way through the country in multiple different waves next week. So setting the stage for that, we've been talking about this for a while. This is Monday afternoon. You can see this sharp boundary here between this very below average cold Arctic weather, excuse me, having trouble talking this afternoon, and then this warm southeast ridge. And where we get that kind of battle between the two is where we're going to see multiple waves of that precipitation ride, and that's what will help to cause some of that icing on the northern side of that. So you can see as we go through next week, this boundary will kind of continue to meander slowly to the east and southeast before eventually kind of winning out over that cold air, I think, as we get into next weekend, as we get kind of a reinforcing shot that will help to really bring that cold air down. And that's whenever we could get some of that dangerous cold into sections of the country. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. Let's go ahead and talk about this icing potential going into next week. So this is for Monday afternoon here, pretty quiet still, but I think this is whenever we get kind of our first wave of this icing, and it's hard to tell here in the GFS because the GFS is kind of struggling with this, but I will show you a better model here in a second with the Euro. But I think going into Monday afternoon and Tuesday here, we'll get kind of this plume of moisture to work its way up through the Gulf, and that's whenever it will interact this very shallow Arctic air here. And this is how we get ice. We get this very cold air, which is dense, which makes it want to sink to the surface. And then whenever you get this warm Gulf of Mexico air to ride over that, you get an inversion or temperature actually rising with height other than the other way around, which is what we normally see in our atmosphere. And that will help to cause rain in the upper parts of the atmosphere. And then as it gets to the surface where we're below freezing, creates that ice, which can become very dangerous very quickly. And it doesn't take very much. So Monday afternoon, we get that first plume here. Again, hard to tell in this model, but I definitely expect at least a thin corridor of some of that icing potential here from Oklahoma City up through northern Arkansas, southern Missouri, and then kind of up the Ohio River going later into the week here. You can see that wave moves through, maybe even seeing some of that ice in a place like Nashville, Memphis potentially, seeing some of that as well. And we will have a little bit of snow on the northern side of this ice, but it's not really going to be enough snow to amount to much, and the icing will be a much bigger concern here. And then that continues. We get another wave after that later in the week where I think once again we'll probably get some overlapping here of icing where that rain hits that cold Arctic air into the middle of the week. And then we get one final round here towards the end of the week going into Friday where we could also get some of that overlapping into the mid-Atlantic before eventually clearing out going into this weekend where we will have that cold air funneling behind. So the Euro here, the next model, I think is doing a much better job with this system as a whole, or this pattern, I guess I should say, because it's kind of multiple systems really. So we'll take a look at this here. This is the Euro. You can see going into kind of Monday evening and Tuesday morning. See this big band of that icing setting up in sections of Texas up through Oklahoma City. And that continues to move up through this boundary into sections of northern Arkansas, as we talked about. And then that kind of section fizzles out a little bit before getting a reinforcing round going into Wednesday here. You see even more icing here into sections of Texas, and this will likely spread up towards the Oklahoma City area. And then once again, sections of Missouri potentially getting in on that. And I will add, the places that aren't seeing this icing are definitely getting, unfortunately, a very cold, miserable rain on the south side of this. So really unsettled throughout this entire week with rounds of rain and or icing coming depending on where you're living, or where you live, I should say, probably a better way to word that. And then again, get kind of a final push of moisture going into Friday before clearing out going into this weekend with that very cold air behind it. So I'll briefly touch on the snowfall chances here, but then we're going to discuss more on that ice. So looking at our Euro ensembles here, for those best chances of snow, you can see going into the first half and middle of this week, I do think we get a bit of a corridor to set up to have a chance of that snow on the northern side of that icing potential, although nothing off the charts here. And really, if you see some of that snow, a dusting is your most likely case, maybe a couple isolated spots getting more in that 1 to 3 inch range, but really not a lot of snow to talk about here. And you can see then you get kind of another round of that going into this weekend here into sections of Texas, Oklahoma, and then that moves into areas of the mid-Atlantic, which could also get into some of this wintry mischief, if you will. And then after that, with the Euro ensembles here at least, there's been kind of some question marks, and you might have seen some people talking about potentially a coastal storm up the coast. this would be that time frame. And as you can see on the ensembles, not really much to talk about. So we'll get through this week, and then if we do get some kind of threat to materialize after this, then we'll talk about that. But right now, there's really just not much support at all with our ensembles looking at that. So looking at the GFS, same story here. You get kind of a band of potentially some of that snow accumulating here going into the first half of the week. Through a lot of the same areas the Euro showed. I do think maybe those higher terrains into a place like West Virginia could have a more enhanced risk of seeing some of that snow accumulation, but still likely more of a 1 to 3 inch event than anything significant, and then more of a dusting areas outside of that into the lower elevations that do actually see some of that snow falling. So that's the first round. And then once again, we get kind of a second round after that going closer towards the weekend. And you can see a lot of the same areas getting in on those chances of seeing some of that light snow falling. And then that eventually clears out. And again, people that are talking about this coastal storm that could potentially impact the southeast or northeast, really a goose egg here on the ensembles. This is like 3%, I think. Yeah, so that's like one member out of 30-something showing a chance of snow. So really nothing to talk about there right now. Okay, so looking at that, or those snowfall totals here, and let me actually bring this ahead. Sorry, it's a little bit behind here. There we go. You see with our blend of models, really not much at all to talk about here. I do think we have maybe an enhanced risk here into sections of the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma, where the Euro ensembles and GFS ensembles we showed, sorry, words are really difficult today for me, showed some of that snow accumulating out here. And then also potentially into the northern mid-Atlantic having a bit more of an enhanced risk of seeing some of that snow with kind of these rounds of precipitation through this week. But the much bigger story is that icing potential. And I really think here through Oklahoma City up into northern Arkansas, down into sections of central and northern Texas have the best chance of seeing some of that icing. And once you start getting here past 1/10 of an inch, that's really whenever you begin to run into travel troubles. So we'll definitely watch for that here through sections of Oklahoma, Texas, northern Arkansas, and up the Ohio River a little bit here into sections of southern Illinois. Definitely having the best chance of seeing that ice. And then some lighter potential there into portions of the mid-Atlantic through Virginia, Maryland, and kind of the DC area. So what I do feel confident, though, whether you get any of this ice or not, we will have colder weather behind us, and especially into the Northeast, I think our models have definitely been hinting at that chance of that colder weather. So going through this week, you'll see this line of cold air beginning to work its way further south and east, slowly beating back that southeast ridge. And then by the time we get into next weekend, you can see we are going to get kind of this reinforced shot of cold air out of Canada to help finally kind of reinforce this Arctic boundary and push out that southeast ridge for most of us, although some of us will still be holding on to it. So this is Friday afternoon. You can see overall cooler weather here into the southeast and east coast as a whole, but then this is that very cold shot of Arctic air that will make its way into the northeast. And look at this going into next weekend, next Saturday, looking at potentially 30 to 40 degrees below what you should be this time of year going into the start of next week. And so that is dangerous cold at that point. We're talking about highs in some places of the Northeast not getting above zero, with at least that being a potential. And we'll continue to watch the trends, but the trends have been for a colder weekend next weekend into the Northeast and the East as a whole, but that dangerous cold up into the Northeast before eventually the pattern looks to go kind of back to the Southeast ridge dominating going further into the start of February. Okay. So that's all I've got for you today. I am a lot more free today in my schedule, so if you have questions, go ahead and ask them in the comments, and I will definitely get to answering those as soon as I possibly can. With it being the weekend, I'm a little bit more free. But once again, if you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to hit that like button and subscribe. We're getting really close to 1,000, so if this is something you want to be a part of, feel free to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join us. But with all that said, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Saturday, and I will see you all tomorrow.